Auburn hires Hugh Freeze to be the new head coach. This is a reaction pod. You're listening to the SEC Recap Podcast. I am your host, Ben Warren. Good hire or a huge, pun intended, mistake? If you're listening to us on YouTube, go ahead and smash that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, give us a rating and review. We're available anywhere you prefer to chug your podcasts. Man, got a lot of news coming out. Go figure, an hour after I published yesterday's article, a flurry of news drops. Sam Pittman fires strength and conditioning coach Demille Walker after they have an injury-plagued season that fell way short of expectations. Jimbo Fisher fires Daryl Dickey as offensive coordinator at Texas A&M, because all season we've said that the biggest problem in year 5 of Jimbo Fisher's team with Jimbo Fisher's recruits on Jimbo Fisher's offense is Daryl Dickey. That's right. Marcus Satterfield is likely heading to Nebraska with Matt Rule. Satterfield finally calls the 2 best games the Gamecocks have seen in the last 2 years, and fans are still glad to kick him down the road. I'm sure Nebraska won't end up a top 25 offense next year at all, and the Gamecocks definitely won't slide to the back half of the FBS again, right? Eye roll. But no headline was bigger than the one confirming Auburn has hired Hugh Freeze away from Liberty to be the next head coach of the Tigers football program. Freeze is coming to Auburn by way of Liberty, by way of Ole Miss. But first, how did we get here? Let's look back in history just a little bit. Gus Malzahn was the coach at Auburn for 8 years, from 2013 to 2020. Over that time span, Malzahn went 67-35 overall. He won the SEC West twice. He won the SEC Championship once, and he appeared in the BCS National Championship game in his first year. It was the last year of the BCS before they moved to the playoffs. They did lose that one to Jimbo Fisher's Florida State Seminoles, led by none other than Jameis Winston. Despite never having a losing season, Malzahn never made it back to the playoffs. The closest he came was in 2017 when his Tigers played for the SEC Championship after beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl, but Alabama got a bid to the playoffs over Auburn that year. Gus Malzahn beat Saban 3 times, but lost several big bowl games. He lost 2 Outback Bowls, a Sugar Bowl, and a Peach Bowl. In December 2020, after a 6-4 season, Auburn fired Malzahn and almost as soon as it was done, hired Brian Harsin from Boise State. Harsin had huge success at Boise with a record of 69, nice, and 19, but it always seemed like a strange fit for a traditional SEC power like Auburn. Harsin went 6-7 in 2021. It was the worst record Auburn had seen since 2012, and alarms were immediately going off down on the plains. And during an onslaught of media attacks, inside hit jobs by Auburn boosters, and attacks from fans, Harsin returned for the 2022 season. He went 3-5 in a string of abysmal on-field performances and was ultimately released in October of 2022 this year. Auburn legend Cadillac Williams took over as interim coach to finish out the season. Now, this effectively brings us up to speed. As the season wound down last week, it was well known that Auburn seemingly had 2 primary candidates for the job: Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin and former Ole Miss head coach, current Liberty head coach, Hugh Freeze. After it was falsely reported by John Sokoloff that Lane Kiffin to Auburn was a done deal, John Sokoloff tweeted on November 21st, breaking, Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin plans to step down as the Rebels coach Friday and head to Auburn to become the Tigers' next head coach, according to sources. Right, you can't make that up as long as you include the word sources in the reporting. Sources say the Tigers haven't officially offered the job to anyone yet, so Lane to Auburn is happening. Story soon. Now, this was ahead of the Egg Bowl, right? So Lane Kiffin proceeds to relentlessly troll John, and rightfully so, in a series of tweets over the next several days, ripping him for the reporting, his anonymous sources, and being a bad journalist just trying to become famous by writing whatever he wants. And his first tweet was a retweet of the one I just read that said, "That's news to me, John," with the facepalm emoji, nice sources, etc., etc. Kiffin would go on to tweet several times saying things like, "It's great that you can just make things up and, you know, become famous overnight, and I sure would love to know who those anonymous sources were." Anyway, Lane Kiffin said he had to sit the team down and say, "I'm not actually leaving Ole Miss to go to Auburn. I'm staying right here. Forget about everything you're hearing and reading from the media." So ultimately, Lane confirmed he's staying at Ole Miss and signing a new contract extension. So this brings us to the man of the hour, Hugh Freeze. Once Lane confirmed his intent to stay in Oxford, it became only a matter of time until Auburn officially announced Hugh Freeze as the official hire. The news broke yesterday afternoon on a Monday the 28th of November, with details of the contract, and Freeze plans to give a press conference today. That press conference is actually ongoing while I'm recording this, regarding him taking the position in Auburn. So let's stop a second. Record scratch. Freeze frame. Little trivia time. What do all three recent Auburn head coaching hires, Malzahn, Harsin, and Freeze, have in common? Ding! They all coached at Arkansas State for 1 year before heading to their first major head coaching job. Harsin was at Arkansas State in 2013 before going to Boise in 2014. Malzahn was there in 2012 before going to Auburn in 2013. And Hugh Freeze was at Arkansas State in 2011 before going to Ole Miss in 2012. The Arkansas State to Auburn pipeline is a strange and strong vintage indeed. Hugh Freeze went 39-25 at Ole Miss, and his best conference finish was second in the West in 2015. But he beat Nick Saban in back-to-back years in 2014 and 2015, and he appeared in the Peach Bowl and Sugar Bowl in those years, respectively. At Liberty, from 2019 to 2022, Freeze went 34-15, which include 3 8-win seasons, a 10-win season that saw them at a number 17 ranking in the AP poll, and 3 bowl wins over that span. Now, a lot of people don't know this, so just as an aside, Liberty is a private school, but it is very, very affluent. And in fact, their facilities and resources more closely resemble those of a lot of Power 5 programs. So Hugh Freeze was not, I mean, he was taking a step down from a Power 5, but as far as facilities and resources are concerned, he was working with a lot at Liberty. So it wasn't really as big a step back as it might look like. So right or wrong, look, there's a lot of controversy right now about Hugh Freeze to Liberty, and we're going to dig into this a bit. I first want you to understand that I'm just presenting both perspectives here. I'm not saying it's the best hire. I'm not saying it's the right hire. I'm not saying it's the wrong hire or a bad hire. I'm just exploring both perspectives that we're seeing emerge in the wake of this headline breaking. Okay, so if you disagree with me or you hate whatever I'm saying, Don't at me about it. I don't care enough to debate you on it. I'm just presenting what I see as both sides or both perspectives. There's no doubt that Hugh Freeze is a competent and winning coach who can achieve at a high level, especially with the components and resources available to him at a school such as Auburn. He has a track record of success. He's shown he can beat Saban, which is still the standard in the SEC. He'll certainly have Auburn competitive with Georgia, in my opinion, which will be good for other teams in the SEC East. And he can bring Auburn back to where they want to be. Now, he's giving his press conference while I'm saying this. And if you're watching that or you're listening to this and then you're hearing about this press conference later, or you've watched the press conference and you're listening to this podcast later, you need to understand that all of those press conferences are designed to make you feel good. They're designed to make people feel good. They make you feel like you've got the right guy. You're capitalizing on excitement, which is Public Relations 101. You've got the new coach, you've got all the optimism, you've got all the energy, you've got all the excitement, and you need to capitalize on that. So Hugh Freeze and everybody's going to come out and talk about how, here's my personal connection to Auburn, and here's why it means so much to us, and I know this can be a top 10 program. We've got all the resources and support. I believe we can win championships, on and on and on, right? You're going to hear him talk about, this is a family, and this is what family means, and it stands for faith and love and integrity and all of those things. Those are all things every new coach that's hired says in those press conferences. That's what they're supposed to. One thing that stuck out to me, though, before I started recording this, and this is going to be important for what I'm going to talk about here in a minute, is that Hugh Freeze came out and talked about how thorough John Cohen was. He's the new athletic director that came over from Mississippi State. He talked about, he measures 100 times before he cuts once. He's very, very thorough, and he's thorough in every single aspect. And that is because, mark my words, one of the main criticisms about the hire of Hugh Freeze is that they maybe didn't vet it properly. They didn't vet him properly. They weren't as thorough as they should have been. So a lot of the questions here, not from an X's and O's standpoint, nobody has any doubt that Hugh Freeze is bringing the offensive wherewithal, the ability to recruit, the ability to get players to buy in, the X's and O's on the field. He's outstanding from that perspective. Nobody questions that. The questions are about the integrity and the thorough nature of the hire. Okay, so let's step back a little bit in history again. Freeze was forced to resign from Ole Miss when an NCAA investigation into impermissible benefits led to the uncovering of a quote-unquote disturbing pattern of calls to a female escort service, prostitutes, okay, from Freeze's university-issued cell phone. Now, he lied about this. When this first came out, he lied and said, it was a misdialed number. But as they dug into it, they found over a dozen phone calls from his cell phone, his university-issued cell phone, to this escort service. So he did this, then he lied about it. That's the integrity issue, okay? So Ole Miss claimed he violated the morals clause of his contract and told him he could either resign or be fired. He chose to resign, and then he ended up at Liberty. Now, upon his return to the SEC, several strange details are emerging surrounding his contract and the stipulations of the hire. One of the most notable is that Freeze must surrender ownership of his social media accounts. Now, in my article, in my write-up, I include source material for all of this. So if you want to see where I'm getting these claims, you can just check out the article. That link will be in the show description. It has all of the sources there, just so you know I'm not plagiarizing. Now, it is well known that Freeze searches his name on Twitter and DMs people who mention him. He's done this a lot in recent years. Most of it is innocuous, but recently a very kind of troubling string of direct messages has emerged. Liberty is currently under investigation by the Department of Education. This is a federal investigation into how it handled student reports of sexual assault. This follows a lawsuit that included over 20 plaintiffs, who sued Liberty for mishandling sexual misconduct allegations. That lawsuit has since been settled, but some of the plaintiffs have continued to be very vocal during the ongoing investigation. The most vocal, perhaps, is a young woman named Chelsea Andrews, who has identified herself as Jane Doe 7 from the lawsuit. Andrews has been very, very critical, rightly so, of Liberty Athletic Director Ian McCaw and the mishandling of sexual assault allegations. Now, here's the kicker. Before Liberty, McCaw was the athletic director at Baylor before resigning in the wake of that high-profile investigation by the law firm Pepper Hamilton into Baylor's mishandling of sexual assault allegations. That ended with head coach at the time, Art Briles, very successful head coach, being terminated. President Ken Starr being demoted from president to chancellor. I don't know what kind of demotion that is. And McCaw subsequently resigning as athletic director before going and taking a similar position at Liberty. So I think everyone has a right at this juncture to look at McCaw's position at Liberty critically, considering what transpired at Baylor, followed by the very same thing occurring at Liberty. Now, again, don't at me. I don't care what you personally believe or agree with or disagree with. If you disagree with me, fine. This isn't my opinion. These are the facts that are reported, right? I'm just presenting everything that's out there to you. So if you don't agree with it, I don't care. That's not really relevant to what I'm getting at here. So how does Hugh Freeze fit into this? Well, Hugh Freeze, again, known for DMing people who mention him on Twitter, has sent a few troubling DMs to Chelsea Andrews regarding her criticism of Ian McCaw. This is a matter he unequivocally should not be inserting himself into. In the article, I linked to Miss Andrews' tweet that includes a screen cap of one of the DMs from Hugh Freeze. She basically says, "Why is the head football coach at Liberty University DMing me during and after my lawsuit with Liberty University at almost midnight when I didn't tag him, and I haven't responded to the other DMs he sent over the months." I include another screen cap that include two of the DMs. These are both from Hugh Freeze. She doesn't respond, but Hugh Freeze says, "I would love for you to help me understand your attacks on me and our program. I'm open to talk about issues you have with me/program, either face to face or by phone, but I've never believed in social media discussions when you don't truly know the other party. Hope you are well and have a great day." That's just problematic for so many reasons. The second one reads, "You don't even know Ian McCaw. He is the most Jesus-like leader I have ever seen or been around, but you take every chance you can to take a shot at him. I don't understand that mentality." Again, if you can't see the problem with Hugh Freeze inserting himself into a matter that he is not directly involved in that we know about, I don't know what to tell you. This is not something he should be involved in, let alone direct messaging victims from this lawsuit with Liberty University in which your boss is named. That's just very, very problematic. And regardless of what you think about Hugh Freeze or Liberty or Ian McCaw, I think we can all agree that that's just not something you should be doing, period. So it goes back to just questioning the integrity. Why does he feel the need to do that? And again, why does he feel the need to make it about himself? He says, "I'd love for you to help me understand your attacks on me and my program." It really it teeters right there at victim blaming and then shifting the focus from what it's actually about to being about him. He's making this about himself, and it's just not a good look, okay? It's not a good look. So Andrews emailed Auburn officials with her concerns about Auburn's hire of Hugh Freeze. But despite this, the new Auburn AD, John Cohen, called their search process thoughtful, thorough, and well vetted. The school never reached out to Andrews, nor publicly or privately addressed her concerns. Rather than address it, Auburn seems to have included a clause in Freese's contract to surrender ownership of his social media accounts so that this behavior doesn't continue. This seems a lot more like sweeping it under the rug than directly dealing with the issue. This definitely seems like the PR approach. And it's also being reported that Auburn hired a PR firm to handle public backlash against Freese's hire. I include the source in the article, but I'll read here. This is from Sports Illustrated. Multiple sources say Freese has agreed to relinquish control of his social media accounts when he becomes the Auburn head coach. The background check on Freese was extensive, and the school hired a PR consultant to handle the expected blowback in bringing him aboard. They are jumping through a lot of hoops for Freese. As one source with Auburn ties said Sunday, if he's contractually obligated to stay off social media and they had to hire an oh shit firm, shit is blanked out, but that's the implication there, before he even started, is hiring him really a good idea? So I think this is very illustrative here. If you hire a PR consultant to handle expected blowback, why would you be expecting blowback? It's because they've known that Freese has kind of engaged in some problematic back and forths on Twitter, things that he shouldn't be involved in. DMing plaintiffs from a former lawsuit against your place of employment is a bad look, okay? And not only that, you were involved in a moral scandal during your time at Ole Miss. You're the least credible moral authority in a situation like this. Now, the extreme irony here is that a group of Auburn insiders appeared to spin up a fabricated scandal involving Brian Harsin and a female assistant on staff over the summer, which was all bogus in an attempt to get rid of him. Yet they're openly embracing Freese, someone who was let go from Ole Miss following a verifiable moral scandal. It begs the question, is Auburn sacrificing integrity for a chance at being a winning program again? I genuinely don't know. I'm an advocate for forgiveness and allowing people second chances. I really, truly believe that. You have to give people the opportunity to prove that they've grown and changed. So I would say I am an advocate for people allowing Hugh Freese the opportunity to prove that he has grown, that he has changed, and that he's remorseful for his actions at Ole Miss. But while he's certainly had the time to do that, has he actually done that? Again, why are you DMing victims in a lawsuit against your place of employment, inserting yourself into these situations which you have no business? It's just not a good look, and you need to stay out of it. And it's almost like he's trying to step in and say, I know more than you. I'm here to defend this. If you really want to talk about this, you need to talk to me. It's very strange, very bizarre behavior. So while I'm for giving him the opportunity to prove it, I still question whether he actually has. I think this all comes down to the fan base. If the fan base accepts the hire, then I believe Hugh Freese can be very successful at Auburn. If they reject the hire, then it could be Harsin 2.0. And Auburn flat out can't afford to miss on this. But you have to ask yourself, if Auburn had to hire a PR firm to preemptively deal with expected public backlash and force Freese to give up ownership of his social media accounts, winning aside, is this really the right hire? Well, get your popcorn, because we're going to see. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the SEC Recap podcast. Give us a follow on Twitter at SEC Recap. If you're listening in audio form, please subscribe, get notified for new episodes each and every week. And if you're listening on YouTube, thank you so much. Smash that thumbs up, sub to the channel, check out our SEC Pride merch at bonfire.com/store/SEC Recap. We've got awesome SEC Pride merch for each SEC team. Guys, I'll be back with you later in the week to talk SEC championship game, LSU, Georgia. Do the Tigers have a chance, or is Georgia going to run away with it? We will dive into it. We'll break down the matchup. We'll talk about key players, keys to the game, and give our predictions. Guys, there's a ton of news coming out. Transfer portal madness is coming in December. So stay tuned in right here on the SEC Recap Podcast. Have a great week, and I'll catch you on our SEC Championship episode.